Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. It's like a house elf. Better seen than heard.
Speak
Hello,
when
everybody.
spoken to.
Yep, speak when spoken to. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the Room of Requirement. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. How you doing, Justin? We've got a good episode for the week. I'm guessing you've played some more Hogwarts Legacy this week. Is that where we're going?
All sorts of it, but I did have a different one, but right in the moment I changed it up because we had a different intro going that was very fun. But yeah, good to see you, man. It's been a week. Looking forward to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, but before we get all into that, how are you doing? Good to see you.
I'm doing pretty good. Good to see you too. We've got a pretty busy episode as usual today, so I'll lead us off with the Rose, Thorn, and Seed for the week.
Let's hear it.
So my rose this week is just that daylight savings is over. I love having the light out later. It was nice today. We're going a little bit late because Senna was home alone all day, only had her brief time when Willie came over to dog sit for us for the day.
Hey,
so
Willie.
He came over and got her energy out a little bit, but we needed to take her on a nice walk. And now that it's still light out at the 6 o'clock when I get home, it's perfect. So it's just nice. I would prefer this all year, but nonetheless, it's back normal time. So my thorn for this week is actually from work today, but we had a court case that we have to take a resident to court to evict them, and me and my property manager showed up at court like we're supposed to, and there had been a continuance filed that is delaying this by 2 weeks that no one told us about, so we drove over to the courthouse to deal with this, and then just to be told, sorry, come back later. So just a little annoyed at that. This thing's been just kind of like hanging over our heads like a little rain cloud at work. So I would just prefer it to be over and done with. But nonetheless, still lingering. So I'll have to deal with that in a couple weeks.
Damn.
Yeah.
Just kicking it down the road. And now is the continuation from the other party, is it them being irresponsible?
They weren't available for this court time, apparently.
Yes,
so
of course,
yeah,
of course.
Only knew about it for the past 3 weeks, but couldn't be available.
Got
Courthouse is 5 minutes down the road from the property, so yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but really just tough to get to. Inconvenient.
Yeah, it seems like it.
But my seed for this week, though, is this weekend. I'm looking forward to going and grabbing breakfast with my pop-up. I haven't seen him in a little bit, so I'm going to see him, pop over and say hi to my little nephew and my family and all, and then head on back here to Philly. But I'm looking forward to it. I'll be down in your neck of the woods. One of Pop-Op's weekend diners is not too far from your place, so...
Hell yeah. Well, hey man, if you want to do a pop-in, I'm always open to it, but I love a good weekend breakfast. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, I'm big diner fan. I'm sure I've talked about it before, but I love to go and drink that diner coffee. I don't know what it is about it, but I can't get enough. It's my favorite hot coffee to drink. I'm probably weird for that. But yeah, looking forward to that this weekend. But enough about me. What's been going on with you? What's your rose, thorn, and seed for this week?
Well, to start, I think there's a large population of people that enjoy, the old diner coffee. I used to have a gang of gentlemen come in and, like real early morning guys, and yeah, I mean most of it was just for the coffee, and you figure. You could easily go to like a Dunkin' or a McD's or whatever, but they would sit at the fucking counter and drink it.
I feel like people either love it or hate it, I guess. I've
Okay.
heard so
Okay. Fair
many
enough.
people like trash it and like, oh, it's stale, it tastes burned, it's like, I'm like, I like it. Diner coffee is good to me.
I feel like that's just the meme though. Like especially like have you ever been in a diner? Usually at those times when you're like drinking the
Oh
coffee,
yeah,
there's a
it's like
million other people in there.
rolling.
So
Yeah,
you think they have time to just leave a pot on the thing and not
right. That's
serve out of
all
it?
fresh coffee. Like
Yeah,
it is.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a meme, and especially even like when I was working the third shift diner, it's like I would just make you a fresh pot of coffee. Like I don't know, I never just left it on from
Yeah.
like the 4 o'clock shit, whatever.
Coffee's
But yeah,
not that pricey that you can't throw some more Maxwell House into the thing.
exactly. So yeah, no hatred on the diner coffee from me. But I'll give you a little bit of my rose thorn and seed here. So I'll start with my seed. I was dabbling around with some AI image generation. Obviously,
I
it's been in the
saw.
zeitgeist. The our Discord service, I guess, has teamed up with an AI service. I'll say I don't really know specifically, but you get a couple of free trials. Obviously, like more behind a paywall, but I was trying it out. It seems cool, although like I imagine there are bots slash services that are able to draw from a larger data set or do like
Hmm.
more search. So some of the stuff that was returned was like it was cool, but ultimately like not at all what I was prompting it for, in the sense of I was hoping to get more of like I was hoping for more of a it searched the internet, it finds that data and says like, okay, this is what it is, and it does like its own render. What came back was like very abstract and not at all
So
search related.
I think part of that, and this is something that I've learned from watching people start to use these, whether it's on TikTok or like other like Twitter or whatever, but with these um, AI chat creation things, it seems like you have to give pretty specific detail for
Right.
them to, or like very specific instructions
Mm-hmm.
on it. So, like, one of the ones I think I saw you did was like Saudi Arabian Grand Prix circuit or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like it's just some random, weird, not real, like, track that's got a
Right.
stadium, like, in that.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
more it looks more about the stadium than actually like a circuit.
yeah, and so I
Yeah.
think you would have to, like, if you wanted, you'd have to say like create an image of the Jeddah Saudi Arabian Grand Prix Formula One circuit or something like
Sure.
that, and then it would create some sort of like image of that, or some different choices. But I've noticed that you have to be very specific, otherwise it will be like super abstract.
Oh yeah, and I mean, hey, I'm not complaining. It was just interesting because we only had so many tries, so I don't think I was going to be able to hone anything in. I tried to like prompt it with an image as well because I know you could have it just like just give it an image, have it alter it in some way, and that helps. But yeah, it was just interesting and cool to get a taste of something that I've heard a lot of conversation. You see a bunch of
Mm,
YouTube thumbnails with like being made with it.
yeah.
So yeah, just interesting. So that's my seed here. My thorn is I thoroughly enjoy getting out on a drive, but something has changed, I think, in the time since I was like really, really in the car, where it seems like uh fragmented minds. It doesn't feel like traffic, it feels like individual cars. And that is like an odd feeling where I think previously there was a sense of like movement together, people wanting to kind of get where they're going. And I'm not sure what's changed. I'm not, I don't want to point any fingers. just an observation, and it just
So
creates some like
like just individual people who are like just not going with the flow of things and jamming things up, or just like when
yeah,
you're okay.
and like not realizing they're creating like pressure points for like larger vehicles and things, and it's like, oh no, you got to like keep moving, these things need space too, they want to get into the other lane. There's like, yeah, there's weird things going on where, yeah, it feels like people are like blocking and jamming stuff up.
It's like it's I think it from since I drive so much going to and from work, I'm going like
Yeah.
40 miles a day round trip, which is like that's decently far for a
Yeah.
work commute. So I think it's just lack of awareness from people.
Sure.
Like I'm jamming
But do
out
you
to my
so do
music.
you see it too?
Yeah, but
Okay.
it's like it's the number of people I see using their cell phones while driving is astronomical.
Yeah.
The number of people who like and being around the city, I'm always like prepared for someone to do something stupid
Yeah.
because there's just so many cars around and it's very busy. So like I'm always just like anticipating. I'm like I'll be coming up in one lane and see a car in the other lane that I'm like that they don't look like they're driving quite normally. Like I think they're like you have to look for these tiny things like oh that car's driving a bit too close to the middle line. Like I think they could very easily come over into my lane or just or like switch lanes without signaling or do like I'm waiting for someone to cut me off to like get too close and whatnot. So I think it's just people, especially with I like I do think cell phones are a big issue with driving and all because I
Sure.
just see so many people using them and then not paying attention. I'm like, thank God the person in front of you just isn't having to slam on the brakes suddenly because you will be smashing into the back of their car. Like it's yeah. I think lack of awareness, maybe a little bit of selfishness, like only thinking about yourself and how things affect you, and people just drive kind of erratically. And I think some people are just bad drivers. So I've got a lot of opinions on driving.
Hey, that's a solid, 1-2 kick, man. Not bad. But yeah, so some not traffic, people like you said being more maybe more selfish on the road. But my Rose here kind of bringing it all back into what we're here for. So me and Sarah tuned into the Optic Major 3 this weekend, and it was fun to go from like group stage Friday, watching a couple of the games, really, and I'll be honest, bro, I got no fucking clue. I got no fucking clue. There's a couple legacy players that I know. I understand like I get the flow of the game, but beyond that, I was pretty green. Now,
Yeah.
understand, I was tuned in back around like it was probably like 2014, 2015. Optic Nade Shot was playing on the team with Scump, and it was like,
Yeah.
it was a pretty big run. But because it was never like my game, it wasn't an easy follow, right? So
Yeah.
whatever, it doesn't matter. Me and Sarah watching it, it was fun to go from Friday to Sunday, and then by like, by grand final Sunday, be like, oh yeah, understanding like positionings, and where on Friday everything looks so frantic and fast, and I'm like, what the fuck is control? I have no idea what's happening. And
Yeah.
then all the way to Sunday, where both of us are like really tuned in, and it's like, oh, this is sweet. We know what's going on. We're like, oh yeah, hotel hard point, like that's so sick. And like now it isn't so fast, right? Now we like
Right.
understand it a little bit. So the Rose is like learning about a Call of Duty major like on the fly over the course of a weekend with Sarah, who was like pretty down. She enjoyed it. And we had a lot of fun with it. So that's my Rose for the week, kind of looping it all back in here.
Nice, very cool. And we'll get to talk about that major a little bit more a little later on. But moving right into the episode, we've got some other news just around the motorsports world and whatnot. But Kimi Räikkönen is going to be making a return to NASCAR later this month. So he'll be going around the old oval ring again. So he's going to be, let's see here. He's going to be racing at Circuit of the Americas, I believe with the same team, Project 91, that he had previously driven with when he drove at Watkins Glen last year. So he'll be joining the NASCAR grid. Along with him coming up here, which I think I'll have to double check if it's, also at Circuit of the Americas. Jenson Button will be joining in racing in that NASCAR event. So that's going to be pretty cool. He'll be with Haas Mobile One team. So jumping into a car for the first time I imagine not necessarily the first time in a little bit, but competing again for the first time in a little bit for Jenson Button.
Well, just to open it up, you're curious how much an individual like that has opportunity for drives, be it a lot or a little. I'm just curious what the opportunities are like, but this seems like a pretty good one for him. That seems fun.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, like, what kind of event this is. I'll have to look a little bit more, because for there to be a number of these, like, not typical NASCAR drivers hopping in cars and everything, I feel like in most cases teams would want their like best drivers out on circuit and everything, the guys that they have week in, week out. So I'm wondering if this is more of a like exhibition type event or whatnot. But either way, it'll be cool. I'll be checking out to see how they do their racing at the Circuit of the Americas. I think that'll be in a week or so. I don't believe it's this weekend. And then another little topic we don't have to dig too far into it, but Callum Islet was talking, I guess, on a podcast, and he was explaining Callum Islet shared this post of a guy talking on a podcast. But basically, you can go to all 17 IndyCar like race days for a total of about $1,000, like total combined 17 races for like $1,000 for just general admission. So probably like $60 per race.
Right. And
comparing that to like Formula One right now with their ticket prices, it's kind of insane. Like I mean, I got an email the other day from a salesperson with the Miami Grand Prix, and they're like, "Oh, are you interested?" Because I had put us on the wait list last year, and they reached out, and I was like looking at the tickets a little bit and everything, and it's like close to $1,000 for like just any seating for the weekend and all. And I'm like, that's one race. IndyCar, you can go to 17 for $1,000. Like, I mean, obviously there's all the travel and other expenses, but like just the fact that it's that inexpensive for the tickets for the weekend is pretty nice.
And I'm curious, like, ultimately, where does that difference in ticket price come from? Right? Like, how much of that is inflated by just, like, intangibles?
I think part of it is that F1 has just become so popular recently, for a number of different reasons, that now we are seeing that kind of come back where, I mean, I think it was the Bellagio bought like $10 million worth of tickets for the Las Vegas F1 race this year to sell as packages with like rooms and stuff on that weekend, like for ridiculous amounts of money and everything.
Right.
And so there's like all these other things. Talking about the Miami Grand Prix last year, like I had us on the pre-sale list. As soon as they announced the Miami Grand Prix, I put us on the pre-sale list. Pre-sale's like days away, and I get an email, oh, sorry, all the pre-sale tickets are gone, before the pre-sale even happened, because they'd given them all out to celebrities or sold them off to like whatever else before it even got to the pre-sale. It's like,
Right.
that's just crazy. Like, there's no, I had no shot of even being like trying to get a ticket at face value kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, how does a normal person like get to that event?
Yeah, it's like talking about the Super Bowl and stuff like that. Like the Super Bowl, people are like, "Oh, well, if your team goes, that just for like a person to go to the Super Bowl is probably going to cost like $5,000 for a single person." So it's like, I think the celebrity and the like, I don't know, the show of it all has like really increased those ticket prices a lot, where IndyCar is just still, it's not as highly recognized. It's not international in terms of like race locations, at least. But I just thought it was pretty wild how like drastic that difference is. That's like
big time.
Massive.
Holy shit! Yeah, well, you know, we're really gonna have to get that OnlyFans fucking ripping.
There we go, the feet finder.
Yeah,
get it out
there we
there.
go. Get these dogs on the web.
But to talk about things costing way too much money, there was an F1 simulator that was built into a Red Bull RB18 show car that is, I guess, being sold. So it looks like, and I'll send you this tweet real quick, but it looks like the front of an actual F1 Red Bull car, and it's set up with monitors and everything to be a racing simulator for the small price of 99,999 euros for the Champions Edition. But if you want just the race edition, you can get that for 75,000 euros. But I mean,
75 grand. I'd be curious what a like similar rig would cost. I would
like
imagine
$2 or $3 grand. I would imagine for like a solid simulator.
Okay, no, but I'm saying industry comparable. So that's like,
oh, I don't know if this is like for at-home sim racing, not necessarily like driver practice.
Yeah, I know. So what I'm saying is, if you Google like, you know, iRacing simulator, I imagine you may be able to find some numbers that are pretty close to the regular edition of this, where people are spending like pretty decent money, especially on something that has the like, you know, like the motion control and all of that, big monitor.
I found one with a ready to assemble kit with a purpose-built PC, gear shifter, racing chair that adjusts and all, and it's 7,800. So it seems pretty legit. So yeah, I mean, it's like, it's not ridiculously outrageous, but I mean, 75,000 euros is still kind of crazy.
Obviously a collector's item. Obviously you don't have to go that hard. Obviously you like,
it is sick though.
Yeah, but yeah, am I arguing because I'm necessarily impressed by it? No. I just think, like, if you were gonna spend $75,000 on a racing sim, I'd probably look elsewhere.
Yeah,
you could probably get something insane, but there's
just
probably
won't
something
look like an F1 car.
I mean, but maybe that is like the most insane one you could get, where it's like, I mean, yeah, but I feel like I'm I not only do I feel like I'm sitting in an F1 car, I literally am sitting in an F1 car. Half of
Yeah,
it, mind you. I don't know. I'm torn. It's a lot of money, but it's sick as fuck. I think I just think sim racing is interesting in and of itself, and just I guess ultimately the number doesn't surprise me, and I don't care that it doesn't.
yeah. I mean, it's uh, all Formula One memorabilia. I feel like is crazy expensive. So for it to be like a Red Bull car turned into a simulator, I'm sure there's plenty of people who are out there who like would want that as like a show off thing in their house along with utilizing it as a simulator.
Well, exactly. I
But
was
yeah.
while you were saying that, I was literally picturing. I was about to go on a tangent of like buying a like memorabilia Formula One helmet and just wearing it around the house. Like you wake up in the morning, just put the helmet on, and
You
you just
sleep
sit
in
in the
it.
arm. Yeah, you just like wear it around the house. Like, can you imagine just like a shirtless dude in like boxers with a Formula One helmet on, just like motoring his way into the kitchen, motoring his way down the stairs? That would
I can
be
picture it pretty well, and it is definitely funny. I was wondering what you were snickering at over there.
yeah, somebody like the idea of somebody wearing like a Daniel Ricciardo helmet to like do their taxes or like hop in the shower. That'd be hilarious.
That would I feel like that would be a great. That's like an old school ESPN commercial where they're like in the office. It's like the driver's like in the locker room like showering or whatever with the helmet still on and
Yep,
everything.
yep.
Yeah, I can
Damn,
picture it, but
dude, we could be on the writers' room for the ESPN commercials circa 2003.
yeah, exactly. They don't make good ones anymore. So,
Oh yeah.
but getting over to some F1 news, and all just more generally moving towards the race weekend. One, just sad note, unfortunately, but the FIA president, Ben Sulayem's son, passed away in a road accident. So, just really sad to hear and everything. So, best wishes to him and his family and all as they're going through a pretty tough time. I don't know if that is going to affect him being around for a little bit. I would imagine that something like that would probably make you shift gears temporarily at least to figure things out because it was only about a week ago when that happened. But yeah, just a sad thing to have happened and all, and I just wish the best for him and his family while they're dealing with that.
Yeah, that's a really tough spot. Hopefully he's able to bounce back and he has a nice supporting team within, any of the orgs that he's involved in that can, help out where necessary and yeah,
Yeah,
just
let
hearts and
him
prayers go out to the family.
yeah, and let him take some time if he needs and everything. So,
Yep.
but looking at some other news that has come out recently, recent reports sound like London may be one of the next big spots for a new circuit going through the streets of London. So, I guess similar to what they're looking to do at Las Vegas, but another big city proposing an opportunity for a race weekend there, and it sounds like they are some officials in London made it seem like they are interested in doing what would be needed to meet the requirements that Formula One has for a track. So I think that would be I think it would be cool, but I'm sure it's similar ideas like when people from Europe or other countries are like, oh, a race in Las Vegas, where I'm like, a race in Las Vegas, like, it'll be all right. But I don't know. Vegas isn't as interesting, I feel like, because it's you in America you hear about Las Vegas and see ads and stuff like that from the time you're a kid all the way up through, so it's like I think seeing streets of other countries where I haven't been is more interesting to me personally, but I could imagine it's the other way around for folks from abroad.
Well, so okay, so foreign city aside, how interested are you in another street circuit? Like my initial
Oh,
reaction to that is like,
the only thing that kind of appeals about it to me is it does look like it would be pretty fast. Surprisingly, it's so the way that it's pictured in this is it's a very long like track like Jeddah, so multiple long straights with a couple little chicanes and things thrown in,
mm-hmm,
couple little like more hairpin type or tight turns at either end.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily the best racing, but I think it would be cool to see at the same time. Like I don't know if it's I don't know. I don't know if my like intrigue in a city that I haven't been to or haven't really seen outweighs the want for a good race and to be like I'll just go see London when I travel there sometime. But I don't know. It's just it's interesting because there's so many locations that are like vying for a finite amount of race weekends each year, and it seems like the list is just growing very quickly.
Well, yeah, especially as, countries are seeing I would imagine the pretty large growth of the sport just period. So yeah, everybody wanting to get a piece. Although I'd be more interested just as a fan in another spa. That's what I would want. A large, sprawling, longer race that is more interesting than a wall on either side race through the streets of a regal city. I truly just feel like there's too many of those.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, yeah, we've just Baku and Monaco are like that's kind of enough for me on the calendar
well,
in that sense.
and then they just added Jeddah, and then they just added Miami, which both of them are street circuits.
Yeah, Miami's not as bad because it is around like the stadium complex down there, but Las Vegas will be a
Sure.
very street circuit type track as well. Yeah, it's like adding up very quickly.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. Give me like I don't want to sound like a what I don't even know what you would call me, but like give me the Nordschleife 2.0. Like give me something in the hills of like Austria or something, you
Yeah,
know?
I think it's I would love that too. I think it would just be really it's a lot easier for a city to say let's make this an F1 circuit for a weekend than it is
Sure.
for a country to say let's build a random racetrack out in this beautiful area that will only be used a couple times a year and we have to maintain the entire rest of the time to keep it in good condition for this one race a year. Unfortunately, it's like
Well, not
it's a bit.
one race a year.
Well,
There's a
I
bunch of
know
other
there's
series that can
yeah
use these tracks.
there are. It's
Primarily
just
like the WEC, GT3. Like they
yeah.
can all use those
I
tracks
just think
easily.
it's tough to I think it would be tough to convince someone to invest in doing something like that
I
when
agree.
there's so many circuits out there in the world already.
And
It's
there's
like
already
what
like paved roads on the ground.
it's like what you would have to do something unique or different kind of to like draw the potential to host a lot of events there and everything. So it'd have to be like a very good track layout. I mean, it's possible. I think it's more likely that we would see something like that happen in a country that doesn't really have as much like infrastructure for racing. I know there's been a number of drivers who have said a race, Max and Lewis, I think both have talked about racing in Africa would be very cool. They've already got circuits that they race at in, I mean, they go to Australia, they go to Asia, they go to Europe, they're in South America, they're in North America. Africa's the only continent that they don't really hit other than Antarctica with racing. So
strap those snow tires on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that there's potential for something like that, but it would have to be in a country that really doesn't like have something like that. Like I couldn't imagine I don't know, France like throwing one out in wine country and just being like, yes, here we're building this racetrack. But I think there's potential for that in plenty of areas still, like around the world.
Well, I mean, I'm just talking about like, you know, Miracle Racing Land or whatever. But in a world where if they're gonna keep going with like these roads are already here, these cities and countries want them, they can, you know, get a bunch of revenue. We go to that, and where we started in the conversation is like spectacle versus like a good race.
Yeah.
And you just get a bunch of spectacles that are just like, whatever, like, let's just wait for, like, Monza next week where, you know, blah, 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 blah. We just start waiting for, like, the classic races anyway. Unsure. I think there's obviously going to be a Goldilocks zone, and my recommendation was just, you know, Miracle Christmas Land.
Yeah, well, I mean, Miracle Christmas Land could be out there.
If you're a true believer.
Yes. And then just looking back into some history a little bit, 8 years ago today, Justin, was Max Verstappen's Formula One debut at the Australian Grand Prix in 2015. So
you would know that, dude. Honestly, you would know that.
Popped up on Twitter a couple times. Formula One
Max
tweeted it out.
Fan over here.
Yeah, big fan. So 8 years, 2 world championships, 36 wins, 78 podiums. Again, all stats that I got from the Formula One tweet, as opposed to
pretty
researching.
Though.
But yeah, very, very good results in his career. And then Carlos Sainz, of course, as well, was racing alongside Max at Toro Rosso, so he made his debut 8 years ago as well.
Wait, so today is their birthday? Is that what you're saying?
Today is their
racing birthday,
racing anniversary, I guess.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha.
So pretty cool. And Carlos Sainz has a win now to throw up there as well. So
just one.
But moving on to just some other quick hitters, it sounds like there is conversation between Red Bull and McLaren about potentially having Red Bull be the engine supplier for McLaren down the line. Who knows? That's years away, but it's something that kind of has been started to be discussed. But getting into the nittier, grittier of this past week, there has been a lot of shakeups and things between Ferrari and Mercedes. And so with Ferrari, we had David Sanchez, who is the head of their vehicle concept, who resigned after more than 10 years of working with Ferrari at Maranello. So he had led the design and development of the F175 and the SF23, which is their current car.
Fucking hang him.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, so that just that's the tip of the iceberg. So
I gotcha.
So David Sanchez, who's leaving, is also rumored that he will be looking to join McLaren later on this season. So I guess there is a required, they call it gardening leave. I'm not sure, but there's like a required period of time, it sounds like, between how long you can you have to wait in between working for different teams so that you
That's
can't
funny.
just be like, oh, I work for Red Bull today. Ha! Mercedes paid me a lot. I'm going there tomorrow. And all of these ideas that I know you're working on and everything kind of thing.
Right.
So it looks like that is going to happen. But there is a lot of unease at Ferrari at the moment because of him resigning. There's also been a number of other higher up Ferrari folks who have apparently been testing their resumes around the grid, sending things around, and it sounds like things are not going super well.
Sure.
Their head of chassis, there's conversation that he may leave. There are just a number of high up engineers with the organization that are leaving, and a number of folks that were appointed and brought in by Mattia Binotto that are probably going to be either moved out or leaving as well. So I'm just kind of, it's interesting, but I'm surprised at the fact that it's happening now. Like, these are things that I would expect at the end of an F1 season. Like, season's over, okay, teams are gearing up for the next season and all. All right, we're gonna head out, take our time, figure out the next step in our careers and all. Best of luck in the next season. You go do your thing. As opposed to, all right, we finished the first race. Well, one of our cars finished the first race and didn't go as well as expected, and now everyone is leaving and just leaving the locking the door on the way out kind of thing. I don't know.
Well, based on what we heard from Fred Vasseur, the new Ferrari team principal, he was very confident in the package that they had going into the start of the season, so the first race. And I mean, like, my man said it with a smile on his face. He was half like chuckling. So my guess is something. I remember Toto Wolff talking about not only do you have to figure out, like, not only do you have to worry about data gathering, but you have to worry about, are the tools that you were using to gather that data sound and based on, like, good science, so that you know the foundation is solid, so then you can move on up. I'm curious if there's a feeling of, like, okay, so we thought we were good. Our data was telling us that we were good, but clearly we fucking weren't. So maybe they're, like, you know, digging even deeper into the, you know, foundation of that solution that they had, and saying, like, no, all this stuff's got to go. We got to kind of rebuild from the ground up. We got to get new personnel in here to maybe look at what they have and say, oh no, this is wrong. We got to do this differently. I mean, I don't know how it works. I mean, I'm a toaster myself, so I have no clue. But, like, it makes me feel like a move out of, like, being bonked in the head with still the same problems and another full season ahead of them. They weren't just they're not going to be able to, like, scrape a whole season together, you know.
It's just
right off the back foot.
No, I think that, like, makes sense a bit, but I'm just surprised that this is when. But yeah, I guess that makes sense. If they thought they had it, they saw at the first race that they didn't, and now it's like, well, we don't think we have any shot at what we're looking to do, so yeah, let's burn it to the ground and rebuild, kind of thing. I mean, that makes sense. It's just it, I guess, when you compare it to other sports, it's a weird time. But
Sure.
most other sports are not developing a piece of machinery during the off season that they need to like be successful, as opposed to like just athletes working out in the off seasons and like getting themselves in shape and like doing that kind of thing. So yeah, that definitely makes sense. It's just pretty drastic changes. But one other thing that that came out during all of this was that Fred Vassar has apparently come out and decided that Ferrari is going to with all these folks leaving and everything, they're going to start prioritizing Charles with the car and strategy. So development of how the car drives, strategies, giving him the best strategies and whatnot, optimal pit windows, things like that. So saw a lot of happy Ferrari fans going, "This is what we've been saying all along. Give him everything." And then I'm just like, "Oh, poor Carlos." Like, that's tough. But
Yeah,
Red Bull
time.
does it too. I mean, Red Bull, everything that I've read, including an article and like interview with Alex Albon, basically said that the way that the Red Bull car is developed it's not that they developed it a certain way to suit Max's style. It's that the way they developed it, Max really likes that kind of car, and so it just is like a match made in heaven for him, as opposed to
marriage.
as opposed to them like necessarily forcing it in one direction. But
yeah, and I imagine that happens in most scenarios, and or there's like I don't know.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
We'll see how it works out. I just think I feel kind of bad for Carlos because I think he's been pretty competitive in a lot of opportunities against Leclerc, but Leclerc has kind of beat him out, obviously more than he's lost. So we'll see how it goes. The season could get very wonky with all these changes and everything. But another team needing to make some drastic changes, the Mercedes squad, have basically determined, like we had talked about last week, that they needed to go with a different strategy for their car. But looking at it now, sounds like their technical director is kind of on the chopping block, on the hot seat a little bit about making changes. They had some pretty substantial meetings looking to create a side pod design. They have some parts that are going to be coming as upgrades ahead of this weekend, but they were pre-planned. They're not necessarily an entire new bodywork for the car that's going to be thrown out there this week, but they'll have some small upgrades that they had planned for this weekend that are coming in. So Mercedes just really having to shift their development big time, and it sounds like they're going to push it in the direction that the other teams have gone with having side pods on the car.
Yeah, and to be fair, I'd be very impressed if they're able to put that together, like knowing what we know about the cost cap infringements, the penalties, the ruthlessness at which the other teams like hunt those mistakes down. It's actually going to be pretty impressive if, you know, Mercedes is able to pull that off, change the concept mid-season. Fuck. That's where my brain got lost. That's what I was trying to find again. shaking it up with Ferrari is we've seen teams do it a bunch throughout the history of F1, not necessarily with like their whatever they got going on with their engine, but we've seen them just fucking oust drivers and get somebody new in and say, "Hey, that wasn't work," and it's like the 8th race of the season.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a wild change to make too.
It is.
So
The mid-season break
to do it.
The mid-season break's a little more set up as like a time that makes sense. It's kind of like to me it slightly reminds me of like League of Legends teams shifting their lineups after MSI. Like you play the spring split, MSI happens, and if you weren't happy in the spring split with your roster, you try and make some quick changes for the summer split and hope that the team can pull it together for Worlds. I just thought it's a lot after just like one race and this early in the season. Sure. I thought it was a little nutty, but looking at the Mercedes team and everything, they Toto had kind of he came out and said basically like we with the cost cap and all like you were mentioning, he's like we don't have the ability to just build 2 cars at the same time. Like we're going to have to pick a direction and really commit to it. Which sounds.
You think George gets the side pods first? Based on what they did last year, I bet he does. And say, get us points now and have Lewis.
It depends, I think. I think it would depend on. I feel like
They've already chalked the season.
I feel like they would do it at the same time.
Wait, how could they do that? You just said they can't build 2 cars at once.
No. Sorry. No, they can't build like 2 concepts at the same time, like a side podless and a side pod car. Like they can't continue to go the way that the car is designed right now and just try and like make the floor better and the downforce and figure things out, and then also build a car with side pods and see which one is like gonna shake out on top. Like I think it was
develop it.
Yeah, like they could like keep driving these cars and bringing upgrades and everything and like keep trying to improve upon them, and also start a new design where they are building it on the side kind of with side pods and get it up there. But with the cost cap budget and everything, it would eat away at their budget way too much to try and continue to develop this car and develop a whole new concept as well at the same time.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, so that, I mean, bringing the upgrades, it's possible that they could bring the same upgrades to both cars at the same race. Typically, teams don't do that because they want to see how it works on one car, as opposed to fully committing and see if it like actually makes sense. But I think,
and that was my argument. Is that you are allowed to have one side pod car, one side pod list car. That is within the rules, even though not financially recommended.
Right. That's more where it's like they had to either choose one path, either commit to this design they have 100%. Or start to plan on the side. But I would imagine if they're going with a side pod design now, that they would try to throw them on both cars at the same time.
And just
commit.
Stack maybe like 2 races. Say like, we can get them on both cars if we do it 2 races from now instead of this race. Okay, we'll do it 2 races from now.
Yeah. Like, take that. Okay. Take a 3-week gap between races or something like that to put some new stuff on both cars and everything. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see, because with Ferrari and Mercedes both seemingly looking to kind of take the L after one race this season, I mean, that really only leaves Aston Martin as a potential constructor fight for the Red Bull team at this point at the top. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out, or if this will cause Ferrari or Mercedes to fall out of that potential second place fight and be vying for third. But either way, it's going to be just interesting, and hopefully the intrigue in what else is going on there in those two teams will keep the season interesting, because it would also be kind of a bummer if I would get bored if Red Bull won every single race. I wouldn't be unhappy, but I would be a little bit bored if Red Bull just won every race the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think that would, I mean, obviously it would just be a very uncompetitive season. And then you wonder, like, all right, well, is 2024 the year it, like, you know, everybody's really cooking?
Yeah, because you and I had talked so much during the offseason about how we were, like, pumped about a three-way title fight. Look what could happen. Look at these teams there. Mercedes got it together at the end of last year. Ferrari's fixing their reliability issues, and we get to race one, and neither of those things happened.
Yeah, like a massive, you know, massive slump from where we thought it was going. So yeah, just some surprising things in that way, but I think the storyline will be interesting to follow, like their development and how much they can improve their situation, and how we'll see what they say and the direness of their words versus what it actually looks like on track. Because it's like a really funny thing if you hear a team like, we fucking suck, we got to get it together, like we have no clue, and they're just like pulling like P3s and 4s and like getting an occasional podium and a win. It's like, okay, you're just pulling our leg.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right.
You're just sandbagging in the media, throwing people off the scent. But I mean, and obviously, like later in the season, Red Bull will start to be more affected, like we've talked about as well, by the cost cap and wind tunnel reduction times, because they have a solid car from last year that they're building upon at the moment. It's really that continuation of upgrades and all. So maybe towards the end of the season, we maybe will see a fall off from Mercedes and Ferrari and see them kind of start to bounce back towards the end of the season. But that still leaves for a potentially pretty uncompetitive season, unfortunately. But it's looking over at the kind of title favorites of Red Bull. There's been some different conversations about Checo, his contract, things like that. It sounds like it's pretty safe and sound, at least through 2024. But Helmut Marko had come out and said that Checo has met expectations, so there's no reason to really question his seat at the moment.
Right.
And then he said he survived 2 seasons alongside Max, and very well. He finished third in the Drivers' Championship last year with 2 victories. But the fact that he said he survived 2 seasons alongside Max, I was like, man, that is... I mean, it's a huge compliment to Max, but, like, that has to... Like, Checo's mental has to be so good being in that spot. Because I would imagine that most professional racing drivers are going to be like to hear, oh yeah, he's good, he survived. Like, that's not what these drivers are looking for. And so that is the result that Helmut Marko is seeing in all of, like, oh yeah, like he didn't get crushed under the weight of the pressure. I mean, that speaks highly to Checo, but it's also like just a pretty wild thought. They're like,
yeah, but it's also honest in the history. Like,
it is.
Gasly and Albon, like, straight up didn't show up. And it puts... So think of that from the org standpoint. Like, they were promised a lion but got a lamb, right? So
Well,
then they've got to shift. So I think it's just being honest with some of the others, and a Danny Ricciardo as well. So that's 3 drivers back to back
well,
to back that all got the boot very quickly
Ricardo left
under.
though. Like he didn't. I mean, he left like partially due to the competition and having a really competitive driver
Didn't
next.
survive.
But I wouldn't say that's necessary. He didn't get like crushed under the weight of Max's like
Yes, he
greatness
did.
or anything.
Yes, he did.
I I don't know, but I think like with Gasly and Albon, the problem there is like, okay, you're comparing apples to oranges to some extent. You're taking 2 young drivers who have only driven for like maybe 2-3 years in F1 at that point, and you're throwing them in with someone who has driven for 4 or 5 years in F1, who is one of the most talented individuals in Formula One at the moment, and you're throwing these like young guys up there and going, yes, compete. Like it's different when with Checo, who has been in F1 for I don't know 10 or 11 years now. He's been around longer than Max has. He's been alongside a lot of teammates. He's been on a lot of different teams. So he has had more experience and more just of a veteran aura about him that I think withstands the young, super talented guy better than being like, oh, I'm also a young guy and you're throwing me against this guy who is just like ridiculous. It's like I think it's tough to compare the way Red Bull did it with Gasly and Albon to Checo just because of Checo's pure experience prior. And he had never raced for... I don't think Checo had ever raced for a Red Bull team. He was never on Toro Rosso prior to coming to Red Bull. He raced for Force India, for Racing Point.
Sure, I don't disagree that the circumstances were different, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with you. I just think the word survive isn't like that harsh. I mean, you did have a bunch of drivers in recent history that for whatever reason did not last, and just a common denominator was Max as a teammate.
Yeah.
Sure, I would very, very much agree with you that Sergio has a lot of upside in that like driver battle.
Yeah, I just felt like it was
survive is
okay.
tough.
I think I was taking it as a harsher kind of thing than it is maybe, but
no, and knowing a Christian Horner, he may like that even sounds like a term of endearment more than a dig. I think he likes to be maybe a little hyperbolic at times and like be a little shoulder nudgy, and that sounds a little shoulder nudgy to me. Because me and Christian Horner are best friends, obviously, so I can interpret his tone.
Yeah, well, it was Helmet Marco who said it, so it's
Well, even better. I mean, that guy's in my speed dial. What are you talking about?
There you go. But looking forward to the race this week. We've want to do a little bit of a rundown with expectations. I think Ferrari, even though we're talking about them possibly falling off, I think they have a good shot. There, of course, is a lot of positive energy behind the fact that they have very good straight line speed. So they think that Jeddah might be a good circuit for their car at the moment. Mercedes is going to be bringing a few new parts to Jeddah, so those will be coming along. But I think at the end of the day, it's still going to be hard to see Red Bull not coming out on top, especially since Leclerc will be taking a 10-place grid penalty after one race to replace his electrical, I don't know, his CE, whatever that is, the electrical systems for the car. So yeah, 10-place grid penalty. So Ferrari is going to be starting off on the back foot a little bit already.
If that continues to be an issue, like you had said last week, that's going to be a pretty consistent grid penalty if it crops up again. Because, like you said, they only have a limited amount of the very limited amount compared to.
This is their second one that they
right.
have out of 2. So
right.
Yep.
So that's going to be pretty tough. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to get a sense of the straight line speed for a lot of the teams, because like you said, street circuit, bunch of long straights, and I think it'll be a good way to see if there are. What am I getting at? Determine like track specific strengths for any cars where you see like like an Aston Martin did really well on this weekend again. Like, I guess a track like this suits their car and their team currently, I think is what we'll be able to find here this weekend.
Yeah, I think, and maybe we'll see it from some of the other teams on the grid that are started out a little lower down. The Alpine, of course, last year we were always talking about it being a rocket ship in a straight line. So this track could potentially, if they're still running a pretty similar design and everything, could be a good fit for their car. So we could see them bounce back a little bit this week. The Williams last year had was. And I think in preseason testing was topping out at some of the higher and highest speeds in the speed traps. So could be some interesting shifts of positions between race 1 and 2. But another, I think, good thing, because I went back and rewatched the last year's race here at Jeddah. It was actually, it was a banger. That was the Max and Charles looking to kind of almost brake check each other to the DRS line and all to get the DRS down the main straight. And so a very positive change that I think they're making to the circuit is for the DRS detection zone for the third DRS zone down the start-finish straight. They changed it from being in that braking zone to being at the start of that long straight. So we won't be seeing these cars like brake check each other to try and get DRS going into that long straight. It'll just be driving hard, and whoever is there coming out of the straight will get the DRS. So I think that's a smart decision, because I mean, just having those kinds of things happen just adds a little bit more danger to the way drivers are. Like, drivers are going to drive slightly more erratically or unexpectedly to try and catch their rival off guard a little bit. So I think it's a smart decision for the circuit.
Yeah, it seems like a logical change. While novel and interesting, like the first time you see it, like you were saying, it just probably causes some more dangerous possibilities. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's should be. I mean, I'm excited for the race this weekend. I know I probably sound like a little bit of a downer because I just wanted more competition, but we still could have some. It could surprise us nonetheless, but.
Well, and that's what I was getting to with the, like, are they kind of sandbagging thing, where it's like, let's give it a couple races and see, what we actually end up with, because like these guys are talking about nose hairs, but they still have to use the same words that we do. So let me see a Ferrari engine on fire, and then I'll.
Oh, Justin, I hope you didn't just caster curse it this weekend. If either of their engines light on fire, I don't know. I'm gonna start coming to you for my fortune tellings.
I was just about to say, open your palm and give me your money, sir, and I'll tell you your fortunes.
There we go. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, looking forward to it. I'm hoping for a fun competitive race, and I think it'll be. Jeddah a pretty solid circuit. I think it's got a lot of fast, straight, and long areas, so I think it should be a pretty solid race. Last year, I think it was one of the best races of the season. So.
Yeah, last year was more exciting than the first. The first just was, I think I would say unsettling, with the track layout. So the changes that they made from the first year to the second year, now the second year to the third year, I would agree. I think we're going to be in for a pretty good race this weekend. Where previously, I know if you go back and watch our episode from 2021, we were, I think, pretty low on Jeddah overall.
Yeah.
But now looking ahead to it, yeah, you're right. I think after the 2022 race, we can expect a pretty good one here.
Yeah, so looking forward to a banger, but we can, I guess, start shifting over into some esports here towards the end of the pod. But did you want to go ahead and hit on the Call of Duty Major before we get into League of Legends, or after?
I would like to spend a little more time on the Call of Duty Major. I have a kind of some points like that I kind of want to run by you and talk about. So let's hit the LPL and the LCK series, and then we'll talk about the Optic Major 3.
Cool. So just to hop over into the LPL in China, we looked at two top of the table teams. We had LNG versus JDG. Both at the time coming into this, I believe, I think they were both 9-2 or 10-2 at the time.
Yeah.
So coming into this week, very big matchup, second and third place in the standings. But just to lead right off, I was pumped with LNG's game 1 draft. The Draven and the Jax just out the gate are two really aggressive picks to go for, and so obviously with that you have to get a pretty decent early lead, because they don't always if they get put down too hard early, they don't scale too well into the late game. So you have to put a lot of emphasis on that early game there, which they were able to do pretty successfully.
Yeah, and especially with the support Nautilus there in the bottom lane, like that just says, fight sneeze. Excuse me, sneeze, oh man. And especially with the Lee Sin in the jungle as well, like that just screams level 3 turret dive, try and at least get the kill on the Nami, burn a couple summoners off the Lucian as well. That's just such an aggressive setup. But yeah, like you were saying, is going to have some trouble in those extended fights, but in the skirmishes, like is really going to excel. And we see LP, the bottom laner for LNG, play that Draven pretty well, getting one early cash in, and then able to follow it up with a couple more key ones.
And that cash in was like 500, or I think he got like 500 some gold, so it was like 210 bonus gold from his adoration stack. So just,
and that just catapults him ahead of the Lucian there.
Yeah, big time. And by the end of the game, I mean, he was 4,500 gold up on his counterpart there, which is just massive when you're even comparing some of the other lanes. But Zika as well, just on the Jax, he became a whole nother beast on his own pretty quickly in the game. They were able to get some good pressure on 369 in the top lane. And Kanavi, and this is, I feel like, something that we just continue to see with the Vi as well, which I think I'm going to start expecting teams when they're playing into the Vi to start going with some of these more aggressive picks as well there. Because I feel like what we continue to see is that if the Vi doesn't get ahead in that early game, it has very little comeback potential. Like a Lee Sin or a Gragas, a Sejuani, like some of these other junglers have a bit more ability to focus in on a certain aspect of the champion, where being a bruiser jungler like Lee Sin can be pretty hard from behind too, but being a bruiser jungler like Vi with a lot less mobility than a Lee Sin kind of I mean, your whole thing is I'm throwing myself in at their carry into the back line. And if you're just getting immediately blown up because you're too squishy or you don't have enough damage or whatever, you're just kind of shot. You don't have the flexibility of utilizing a Lee Sin kick to put someone in a good spot for the rest of your team to kill off, or a safeguard to dash away to a ward. So I think the ability for the Vi to come back from being behind is pretty rough. Like when it gets ahead or stays even, it's fine. But I wouldn't be surprised to see teams start going for more aggressive kind of counters to that, as we see that continue to be played, especially over in the LPL and LCK.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a great point. We see Kanavi, the Vi player in the first game, go to do the best that they could in the scenario that they had. So I think Scout did a really good job on the LNG side to move top lane and help Zika get ahead over 369, where nice solid roam top lane gets him the kill and the advantage. You know, JD Gaming recognizes this. Kanavi looks to move bottom lane, make a couple of plays, most of which get turned around by LNG. But I think Kanavi was looking in the right spots for kind of the counterplay there. But you're right, doesn't have the advantages of like just being able to sit in that team fight. And I mean, how important is it to like, just eat the hook, take the CC, take a couple of Ezreal Qs, like just the tank being able to sit there just in the middle of the fight, like that health bar actually mattered. Like you were saying, like the Vi just ends up being a bit too squishy. Ultimately, the health bar does really matter when they are bringing like effectively the same level of crowd control. It's maybe just a question of mobility. Vi can get a little bit deeper. Through the through movement abilities, where she stays locked on with her assault and battery. So yeah, you make these interesting trade-offs, but you're right. I think it makes it tough for JD Gaming in this game one spot to play from behind.
Yeah, and I was also I really liked LNG's draft. They picked the aggressive picks for LP and Zika, but they also had the more supportive picks. The Nautilus is a great pairing to go along with the Draven, but also the Lissandra in the mid lane is huge. We saw a number of different opportunities that Scout was able to get in the back line, hit like 4-man snares with the W there.
That was sweet.
Be able, and just the sustain that you have between like the snare, then you have the Lissandra ultimate, then you have the stopwatch or the Zonia's hourglass, and you're just able to like sit in the middle of the team fight where no one can do damage to you and just wait for your spell rotation to basically come back up while the rest of your team is capitalizing on whatever you're able to do. So it's pretty solid draft from them in game one, which does end up netting them a pretty big win. Game two, again, and so just looking at some of the players, LP impressed me throughout this series. He had a nice game in the bot lane on the Aphelios, but Ruler really took over this game as we got deeper in. A pretty tight tight matchup overall. Very back and forth with the dragons. No one ended up getting Dragon Soul. The Baron and just gold and everything was tight throughout this matchup. And some pretty different draft picks in this game compared to game one as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I like Kanavi taking the Lee Sin. Before the game, I was looking up the LCK Syndra stats. But that one is standing out as kind of interesting to me. I'm curious, like it is in this meta of like, Ari bans and LeBlanc bans and stuff, and that's where we've seen it like before as well. We've also seen Syndra crop up in like an Orianna meta as well. But it does not seem like the strongest of the mid lane picks. Obviously, JD Gaming gets a dub here, and this is in China. But it's just a champion I'm just gonna keep an eye on, I think.
Yeah, so at the moment in China, I know we're looking at the stats for Korea, but the Syndra is an even 29 and 29, 50% win rate in the LPL at the moment.
Okay, fair enough. So Chinese players are using it a little bit better than the Korean players. Gotcha. Yeah, I would say so. But yeah, Knight able to, pretty good scoreline, 4-5-9, getting in the faces of LNG as it were, setting up some of those stuns and key plays for, like you were saying, Ruler. Ruler kind of popped off in this game.
Yeah, and moving on to the third game. So this one, I did expect. I kind of expected LNG to end up pulling this out just because I think that LNG's top side of the map is a bit more talent, like not extremely, but I think their jungle and top lane are both slightly better than with Tarzan and Zika than 369 and Kanavi.
Okay.
I don't think it's a drastic difference or anything, but I thought that with a relatively even matchup here, that they would pull this out, especially with how well LP was playing throughout the series. But Scout really in game 2 and in game 3 then struggled pretty hard in the mid lane versus Knight. He was just consistently unable to really get damage down ahead of time, and that was in big part due to like some really good ultimates from missing on the Renata. But between that, the Vi, the Ari, he just consistently was having to stay outside of team fights, not get opportunities to really do much until the very end. At the Baron fight, he comes in where it's just him and Zika versus 4 lower health JD Gaming members. He throws out the Shurima Shuffle. He's trying his best, and both of them just get squished, and just couldn't. It seemed like it was he got put behind, and then for the rest of the game, it was just too little, too late kind of when he was showing up. So yeah, tougher game 3 for LNG, but overall, like a very competitive series with some really solid games throughout.
Well, and then to JD Gaming's credit, honestly, like maybe there would have been a position in there for LNG to mount a comeback, but I think they're like mid to late game play where they go from Dragon to Baron. They have Scout pushing in the top lane, and they're just able to just like full stack on that bottom. Like that whole sequence of plays was really clean, and I think if LNG found a window, I'm not saying it's like necessarily even possible or whatever, but if LNG was able to find a window there to like stem that Baron push, I think they would have been able to buy a little more time. But the swiftness with which JD Gaming pulled off that little little combo of neutrals, it was a pretty decisive like, all right, we're just gonna win the game now.
Yeah.
And the way Scout like was teleporting back into his base, it's like they just their pants were down.
Yeah.
So well played, decisive movements in the late game by JD Gaming there to give them credit as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't by any means think that LNG just threw away the game, but I just had I really thought that they might pull that series out. But yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree.
props to JD Gaming. They had a really solid series. Ruler had a ridiculous game 2 and 3, 8-2 and 6 on the Zeri, then 6-0 and 6 on the Aphelios. So some really solid play from him. Missing looked very, very good both on the Lulu and the Renata. The Renata ults were, I mean, huge game changers to be able to just push on to the LNG squad without having to or just utilizing that as kind of an engage opportunity. Worked out really well for JDG. So a 2-1 victory for JDG. They, of course, are still tied with LNG in that LPL standings at the moment. So still very tight over there in the LPL with EDG up top, JDG in second, and then LNG in third. But we also had a little bit of a LCK action between a couple of teams that we've looked at a little bit with the Damwon Kia Plus. Is it Damwon Kia Plus?
I think they're saying D plus Kia, but yeah, it's a Damwon organization versus Fredit Brion over there in the LCK. And I thought this matchup was fun, and I mean it was a 4-11 versus like an 11-3 matchup. But what I thought was interesting about it was I wanted to follow up on the previous week, see if Brion was able to fare better against another top team, but also they had spoiler opportunity on Damwon's like seeding. So now it is not fully in Damwon D plus Kia's control, where if they would have been able to 2-0 Brion, it secured their number 2 spot. But because of the way the series went, Brion won game 1, which is what they needed not to happen. So it just messed with their playoff possibilities, and depending on what goes on, could lead to a worse seeding. They may have to go up against Genji sooner than they want to, or something like this. So it was just an interesting matchup from that perspective. One play I do want to highlight from game 3 was Showmaker's wall. It was like late game. They had really already won. But to be fair, that wasn't a wall that I've ever seen before, where he put it right on the structure that was on the map, and it just cut off the lane totally. Like they had to run along it down into the river. Like, it seems like a very obvious wall when done, but that's the beauty of these players, where they make something so simple. I mean, it locked that game up with one ultimate. Yeah. Yes, there were gold leads and whatever, but that was a really, really exciting use of that Talia ultimate, and brought back that old there's Showmaker, let's go. So I think that was a very flashy way to end what must have been a frustrating series for D plus Kia, because that should have been a 2-0. They should have been drinking smoothies in literally 35 minutes.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I have to give big props to Brion, because, and this is it's something that we had talked about earlier in the LCK season. We can go back and check the tapes, but I remember talking very highly about Brion and saying that I felt like they were right there, but just were sort of outmatched in a couple of roles, to the point that they were just getting beat by these other teams. And they have these glimmers of greatness where Morgan and Umti and Karis in game 1, just really the whole team was just clicking together. Karis was going and getting some like just backline dive kills onto Showmaker, onto Deft, and everything with the Akali, really utilizing the movement and all to get around there. Umpty was just hounding Canyon throughout that game, just beating him to the punch, being everywhere that he was. And then Morgan as well. Morgan like looked really good on the Cassante, and so as a whole, like those are the games where I'm just like, this Breon team is like playoff potential. And then I look at the standings and I'm like, and they're 8th out of 10 and they're 4-13. But but they're picking up games off some of these top teams, and it's impressive. They have a lot of potential there. It's just they're not quite there.
Well, yeah, and especially we were talking before the show about the Syndra Akali matchup, and like that's what this Brion needs to find is matchups like this where their carry players can get advantages from jump. And because yeah, you're right, the Akali looked really good for Karis there in the mid lane and makes Brion look like a team that really can punch up.
Yeah, like it's very impressive when they are clicking. They look really good. But yeah, the going into kind of game 2 and 3, Umpty really started to struggle a lot. I feel like the mid lane play, the Assassins, Karis is definitely better on. I feel like being on the Akali, I think he played a bit of the Silas earlier in the season that he looked pretty good on. But he, going against Showmaker, playing these kind of more farmy mages, just Showmaker's just going to do it better. And the Showmaker's LeBlanc in game 2 looked just incredible. He was nuking people out, and I'm like, I haven't seen that since LeBlanc first got reworked like 5 years ago. I felt like he just was putting them out of their misery pretty quickly with that LeBlanc, and then like you said on the Talia, the ultimates and everything that he was doing there was he looked really clean on that pick as well.
Well, and I think from looking at game 2, the last pick red side for Morgan was the Irelia into the Jace, goes 1-4. I actually think that was a pretty pivotal point in the series where like, your red side pick 5, and that's supposed to be the bread and butter, and they were not able to make it work. I think Canna and Canyon kind of had the upper hand in that matchup there, and was kind of able to tip that what they were hoping was an advantage from the pick ban.
Yeah, and the Aurelia, like, I like the pick. They got a kill on it pretty early, but the rest of the game they just weren't really able to like utilize it that well, and it's hugely in part to Showmaker and the bot lane really being ahead to allow that focus to kind of go topside for Canna and Canyon to kind of win that topside as well. So,
but yeah, Damwon able to seal it back up, not give a unfortunate series to Fred Brion, and keep their spot near the top of the table. But they did fumble in the early stages of the series. But I do really want to get to the Call of Duty tournament. I've got some questions for you, and I want to start out with, what do you know about El Bagra Fortress Control? If I say that, what does that mean to you?
I hate Fortress in general.
Okay.
That map.
Okay.
The map sucks. It has a lot of spawn traps that are easily done. It has a lot of angles that you can hold really easily from the defender side, for whether you're playing control or if you're playing search and destroy. Even on hardpoint, I don't like the map. You're like, the hardpoints have too many like weird little, like there's one hardpoint where it's just right behind that big truck, and it's like you can just like lay there and just like, there is no angle that people can like see you from without hopping around that corner. And if you're just laying prone, aiming down sights, and have better reaction time, you just win that fight every time. So Fortress itself, I don't really like. And so, yeah, control. And also, I personally don't like the control game mode.
Gotcha.
I'm not. So Call of Duty, I had said recently they released a ranked mode and all for that, and so basically that ranked mode is like played by CDL rules, game modes, things like that as you're ranking up. You're not getting team deathmatch and kill confirmed. You're playing hardpoint, search and destroy, control, and just rotating through the different maps. But Fortress is probably one of my least favorite maps, at least of this Call of Duty personally.
Yeah. Okay. And that was the sense that I had gotten from the cast. Me and Sarah were watching Scump's co-stream of it.
Nice.
So getting like more of the pro insight rather than like hearing the cast and like having to hear all the ads and stuff. Well, their co-stream was really great. I'll just say that for a new player coming to watch it, it was really great. They were swapping in and out at all the right times and giving, good bonus info. So that was great. So that came across. Your points about Fortress really came across from their perspective as well. So that's where I wanted to start.
Yeah, and Scump is like, he's been for a while I think it goes back to some extent, like kind of the origination, like you were talking about Optic back in the nade shot days, like way
he was
back,
on that
like
lineup.
2030. Yeah, him and Scump. But I think looking at some of those really old school Call of Duty players, if you look at some of the old school Call of Duty casters, Courage JD, Merc, some of these other guys, they are very good at they're very well spoken about the game. And I think it goes back to like back then, to build a brand, to build your team and everything, you had to really grind streaming and all. And so like some of these newer guys that are playing in the Call of Duty League, like, do not get numbers when they stream on their on whatever platform, because they are just a really good player, but they don't have that that vocalization of what's going on and everything behind it. Where with some of these guys that had to grind out streaming from the get-go to like make a living as well as like build their brand and everything, I think guys like Scump, Nadeshot, Courage all have like really good personas and personalities to like explain and do something like a co-stream. So I think that's cool that Scump, now having retired, is hopping over and doing those co-streams, because he has a ton of really just good insight on the game and everything.
Yeah, big time. And it was cool. It was cool to like have a team to root for too. Because like coming into this, like I know some of the team org names. Like there's a 100 Thieves, there's an Optic, there's a FaZe, Toronto Ultra, which I think is Ultra Prime. So they have a League of Legends team. So I easily could have just kind of like, oh yeah, like I'll just watch FaZe or like 100 Thieves or whatever. but through the co-stream, it was fun to, cheer for Optic with them. So that was really fun. And that brings me to my next point is the Optic run at the tournament. So they get knocked out in, winners round 1 by Boston Breach 3-0. So they get just immediately dropped down into elimination round 1. And then they have just a litany of series to go through. They go through Royal Ravens. They beat them. They go through the Mutineers. They beat them. They got to go through Seattle Surge. All right, fine. Elimination round 4. They get the rematch against Boston Breach. The team that drops them down into the losers bracket goes 3-1 up against them, bro. And this is when Shotzi and Hook, you can see the fucking Super Saiyan flames starting to glow around them. Dude, they have so many games in at this point. They've played so many maps. Like, they're what you would call in the drinking game world, they were fuego, baby. They were going off. So it was really fun to follow that run. They literally made it all the way to the grand finals against the eventual winners, Ultra Prime. They go 4-2 against them in the finals. But it was just an insane run. It's Optics tournament. Scump is out there banging the drum. The whole stadium is lit up in green. Everybody's wearing Optic green wall shirts. It was a very exciting event from the Optic perspective. So it was kind of fun to get that whole flavor.
Yeah, and it's neat that they have gone to this regional kind of setup for the Call of Duty League. But it is interesting. I'm curious to see. I don't know the locations of some of these other majors that they're having, but I would hope that a number of the other teams get essentially a home major, because this was at the Optic Texas arena. So to some extent, definitely a little bit of a home field advantage there.
Big time. Big time.
So it's definitely an interesting thing to start bringing in regional fandoms and all, especially with the Call of Duty League having teams who are UK based, Canadian based, American based and all. I mean, you have the London Royal Ravens, a lot of different US teams all over, Toronto Ultra, and so you have a pretty wide variety, I guess, of locations that you could choose from for some of these different events. So,
yeah, it was quite exciting from that perspective. I want to talk about a couple of highlight matches, and then my favorite part from the tournament. So a couple of highlight matches were the Ultra Prime matchup. I guess this would be what would this be? Ultra Prime's quarterfinal match against Boston Breach. They go 3-2, so it's a best of 5. Going into the match, it was set up that Boston Breach was the favorites. They had, I believe, they were undefeated in. I think going in, they were undefeated in Search and Destroy or something. And Ultra Prime was able to overcome them on their maps. So they put themselves into the winners final. And then down in the losers bracket, Vegas Legion versus Los Angeles Thieves. So Legion heavily unfavored in this matchup, apparently. Their tournament run was supposed to be over. So you have veteran Clayster playing on Vegas Legion, and he had some insane pop-off moments that kept them in these games, get them over the hump to where they didn't scrape through the series. They go 3-1 to put themselves into round 3. They get 3-0 by Breach, but their game against Thieves was a triumph. and you could tell like these dudes were hype. Clayster was like up out of his seat. He was pounding his chest. Like these dudes were going crazy. So those were a couple of like kind of upset matches. Well, and then when FaZe got beat by Ultra Prime as well, they were kind of on a run. Like FaZe was probably supposed to win this tournament according to like Scump and them. FaZe was probably going to win the tournament. They get upset by Ultra. So just like all of these little storylines going on, it was actually a pretty exciting tournament.
Yeah, and
But
a couple
go
cool
ahead.
runs, like looking at Toronto Ultra going through, not losing any. Like they ran it all the way through from the start, all the way through the winners bracket up to beating Optic Texas at the end. But the Atlanta FaZe, after losing 3-1 to Toronto Ultra, drops down in the losers bracket to face the Optic Texas team, who has gone through a ridiculous losers bracket run up until this point, playing what is that? Do some quick math, 17 different maps or game modes before coming up to that matchup against the Atlanta FaZe and knocking them out. So the FaZe just kind of came up against two different teams that were on kind of different streaky runs at the time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, definitely an interesting, a couple of interesting storylines, but there's still two more majors this season before going into the Call of Duty championship here. So there's still a lot of good Call of Duty to be watched.
Dude, and I'm looking forward to it now. I think that's super exciting. What I'm very much looking forward to is more of the listen-ins. So they had like team listen-ins live in game, so you could hear them like while they were making the plays. Dude, it is some of the sickest comms you've ever heard because it's so fast. It's so fast. These guys are translating, or like they're delivering and parsing through so much information at such it blew my mind every time it was on, and I was just like, I'm in love with every single one of these people. It was so cool the way they were calling out positions, like how positions were changing, and the maps are so fluid, they're so fucking fast.
Hardpoint's a really fun mode to watch because
Hardpoint was my favorite part.
Search and Destroy, I don't like playing because if you die, like, you're just done.
Like, you're just watching the greatest game, like, watching your homie play.
Yeah, and I'm like bad enough that happens decently often. And Control, I just don't like game mode in general. Sure. I think it's kind of wonky. I've only played it like twice, so it's not like I'm just not comfortable with it. But sure. Hardpoint, like the rotations, the way they're moving around the map, knowing where not only the hardpoint spawns next, but knowing where when they wipe the other team, they are going to be spawning, and knowing what direction they're in, like expecting them to come onto the hardpoint and everything is just, it's super impressive. I've watched some streamers do it. I've watched a little bit of CDL here and there, like tidbit, little clips and stuff, and it's...
So you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's crazy.
It's so wild.
Yeah.
So, but there's also, it's interesting, there's a couple more things that have been gentlemen's agreemented until they get like patched, I guess, in the game. There's some jump up spots in so I think Hotel has one of them. There's like a weird jump up spot in the kitchen that you can get on top of the range hood that's in the middle above the island, and like kind of sneak around. So there's a bunch of little like glitchy spots that people like me can use when I play, but they've agreed not to use in the professional leagues. So
well, and they're better gentlemen than I am. But yeah, Optic Major 3 was super exciting. Looking forward to more Call of Duty majors. Looking forward to any majors, to be fair. But yeah, that kind of brings us through the meat of the show. Aaron, why don't you give me your flavor of the week here?
Sounds good. So for my music this week, I just have been jamming out to and enjoying Endless Summer Vacation by Miley Cyrus, her new album that she released. I'm a big Miley stan, and this album, it's got some really cool songs, some cool just like sounds. It's very like 80s sounding with a lot of the beats and music and the production on it, which I enjoy. There's a couple songs here and there with like I'm gonna have to check out Anthony Fantano's review. I don't know if he's done one yet, but I'm sure he will if he hasn't. But I'm curious to see what some critics say, because there are some songs on the album that I'm just like, that was just kind of a weird song. And it's like, I don't dislike it, but I don't like it either. I'm just like, that seems kind of like wonky, but on the album, like the album as a whole, I enjoy like the more like standard songs, I guess you would say, as opposed to some of these like more quirky like kind of styles. But I think
experimental.
Yeah, like I think it's interesting that she's they're almost like interludes. Seeming cool. As opposed to like standard songs, like something that like Lupe would do, like an interlude where it's like a 1.5 to 2 minute thing, but it's like not really an actual song on the album, right. But it helps to develop the album as a whole. But I have been enjoying that album quite a bit. For my food this week, this past weekend, Colleen and I got some wings from a spot here in town, and we got she got buffalo and garlic parm, and then we mixed the sauces together. So it was like a liquid garlic parm sauce, not like a dry rub. And you're not impressed. Why?
I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. I thought the look. I was like, oh, Justin thinks this is disgusting.
No, I've continued, dude. I'm just listening.
But yeah, the combo of the garlic parm and the buffalo sauce, it's pretty good. Like I wouldn't have thought to try it, but I like the combination. It gives some good flavor along with that like spice and everything. So enjoyed doing a little bit of taste testing with the wings this past weekend.
So my face reaction was curious about how you went about mixing those flavors. Do they have like tubs that they give you and then you pour it on?
Oh,
or
yeah.
Did you end up having to like hump chicken wings together to like trade paint? You know what I mean?
No. So Colleen had ordered buffalo wings with a side of the garlic parmesan like sauce that they have for their wings.
Great. Okay, gotcha.
But
that makes a lot of sense.
Ended up giving us all the sauces on the side. So they gave us like, because she normally orders like buffalo wings with an extra thing of buffalo sauce because they're not saucy enough. But we ended up with 2 things of buffalo sauce and 1 thing of garlic parm and just like slopped them all together there.
Okay, so, that's cool. Yeah. That's cool.
So no, we weren't making the chickens like rub their sauces all over each other.
Well, I mean, that would like take a while.
Oh yeah, that would be a process. So now
and that was my face. I was like, okay. That sounds like such an effort.
I saw your face, and I'm like, I think he's disgusted by me.
No, flavor sounds amazing. Disgusted by the effort that you would have went through to get that done.
No. So okay, not a big effort.
Oh yeah,
but. My visual medium this week, Colleen and I also watched a movie called Triangle of Sadness. It is on Hulu. It's I don't know if it was up for any awards at the Oscars or anything, but it was an interesting movie. It's about a like party yacht cruise that these like Russian billionaires and models and people are on, and the like ship ends up wrecking, and it's a weird it's like a class, or it's a depiction of like the class struggle where like initially on the boat all these crazy rich people are just telling all the staff to just do everything that they want them to do. Do this, do that, like dance for me, monkey kind of thing. But then when shit gets real, the people who are the workers and everything are kind of flipped around to be kind of on top of the, oh, like, no, I know what I'm doing to keep this going. I'm in charge now.
Very cool.
So it's an interesting movie. Ends with like a little bit of a
triangle.
Not quite, but everyone at the end of it is sad, so it turns into a triangle of sadness there. But a very interesting movie, leaves you kind of wonder. It's one of those leaves you wondering or imagining what exactly happens at the end. Doesn't give you quite everything. So solid movie. I would recommend it, but that is my flavor of the week.
Very cool. The movie that, well, me and Sarah, I'll give it to you like this. Me and Sarah got through films 1 and 2 of the Maze Runner trilogy.
Ooh,
so the Maze Runner and then the Scorch Trials.
Yeah.
Dude.
I love those movies.
They're great.
They're really good.
I agree. And a lot of the questions that they raise, like, in the world building and, like, why things have happened, some of the characters, some of the tools that some of the characters have access to, like, fascinates me. Like, the radio that Giancarlo's character has in the second film, like, you know, where he puts the record on, you know, blows the whole place. But he has a fucking radio. Like, the power that would be in an apocalypse, like, you control the information. So, like, they're, while just a good film, within them, there's all these, like, very interesting questions. Or, like, Albie in the first one, where it's like, my man had to be here for a month by himself. And you can just think about that idea for like an hour, and it's just terrifying. The grievers, like, screeching at night alone in that glade, like, that in and of itself is just terrifying.
I would cry so much.
100%. So it just is so successful on a lot of levels. So me and her are really excited to get to the third one, Death Cure. Yeah, we're really enjoying that. Our food for the week, she made up classic chicken piccata, and then we were able to supplement with some extra pasta because we go crazy when we eat it. So we end up having to make more, at least of like one ingredient usually.
Gotcha.
So always a fun thing. And then my music, and this is a good one. I guess I missed it when it came out in 2022. Lupe Fiasco's, I guess, one of his more recent projects called Drill Music in Zion. It was a studio release. Killer, bro. Killer.
Nice.
Just as good as Drogas Wave, just as good as Tetsuo in Youth.
I'll have to check
Killer.
it out.
Dude, Seattle, I would say it's one of my, like, early favorites, early standouts. But, dude, it's just like, oh, man, it's everything I needed right in the moment that I found it. It was great. So Drill Music in Zion goes crazy. But, yeah, that's my flavor of the week.
Very cool. I know how much you love Lupe. It's funny that I mentioned him when I was going through mine.
I was thinking that. I was like, you're the Nostradamus.
Yeah, apparently both of us we're doing a little psychic readings this week, but if you guys want to be some psychics, predict what's going to happen in the F1 race this weekend, why don't you throw it in the comments there on the YouTube video, or hit us up on Twitter. You can find us on Twitter at Tall and Short of One. Of course, check us out on YouTube for the video versions, but we're on Spotify, Google Podcasts. So we're really appreciative of everyone who checks us out on whatever media you do and listens to us just chat and talk about all this fun stuff week after week. So thank you for that.
But yeah, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Tell your friends. New episodes every Thursday. But other than that, just thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Have a good rest of your week. Peace out, everybody.
Later.